Three, two, one. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session, Thursday, April 29, 2021, 10:03 a.m. My name is Ty Mincer, Chair of the Board. We have Commissioner Gary Edwards, the Vice Chair of the Board, as well as Commissioner Carolina Mejia, County Manager Amiro Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, Joshua Cummings, our Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, Jennifer Davis, Thurston County Planning Manager. I see Caitlin Nelson, also from the CPED group. And the topic today is our RIA 1314 Watershed Plan adoption. The meeting is live streamed through the county YouTube channel and available for participation by conference call at 360-252-9020. PIN is 1234. We have 30 minutes allotted, and I'll let the county manager introduce our topic.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. This is a follow-up to the conversation related to, particularly to the WRIA 13. And as you may recall, it was in the process to be approved by the committee, by the WRIA 13 committee. And during that process, you received some suggestions from the Squaxin Island tribe that you may consider introducing into this plan to request the Department of Ecology to update the rules associated with this particular area. So you discussed that, you approved the language, and the staff took that and went back to the group. The Department of Ecology was acceptable of that language, I believe. So fast forward, you have a letter in your packet from the Building Industry Association of Washington, which is a member of the WRIA 13, which raised some concerns as to how perhaps between the county and the Squaxin Island tribe developed this language. And that has put a little bit of a wrinkle on going through the approval process of this particular plan. So today you're gonna hear a little bit of perspective as to what will be an alternative path to get through this approval process. And because the timeline in which this plan needs to be approved has not changed. So it's a timeline associated with that. Did I frame that conversation well, Jennifer, Josh?
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
So I'll just jump right in and let Jennifer take it away. Go for it, Jennifer.
Well, you framed it correctly. So as you recall, the RIA plans are meant to be developed by consensus by their planning units. And RIA 13, you have a letter in your packet from the BIAW that expresses their reasoning for not voting in favor of submitting that final plan to ecology. So that process has ended in no consensus. And so the plan has not been submitted to ecology for their formal approval process. I believe the concerns expressed by BAW are that the language brought forward to the committee by the tribe and the Board of County Commissioners toward the end of the process, which again was a recommendation to ecology to initiate rulemaking, to update the 40-year-old RIA 13 rule to reflect changed conditions and new information, and to make the rule effective, legally consistent, and enforceable. It has to do with setting in-stream flows, and BAW has concerns about opening that rule back up because they fear that might result in some constraints to future development in rural areas of that watershed. And that's explained in their letter. So where we are now with RIA 13 is we don't have a consensus plan. This is not unusual. So we have several RIAs throughout the state that didn't reach consensus. This is not an unusual thing, and it actually emphasizes the success we have had with the Nisqually watershed and the Chehalis watershed. But all of those plans did reach consensus. But for this plan, ecology has provided you an explainer in your packet about next steps. So if you don't have a plan that reaches consensus, there's an alternative pathway for the watershed that does involve ecology taking the draft that the planning unit came up with and putting it through agency review and rulemaking. And the Salmon Recovery Funding Board is the first step in that, and they would do a review, and then it would go back to ecology, and we would have additional opportunities, we and the tribes and BAW and everyone, to offer input to that rulemaking process around the watershed. So that's the alternative path that this WRIA 13 plan is now on. The reason though we're having this check-in is just to make sure that the board was comfortable with it following that path, or if there was some response or additional negotiation that the board and the tribe and BAW wanted to have around their concerns. We're short on time, so there's no guarantee that even if we got to an agreement among the parties around the language and around in-stream flows and future rulemaking, we're not sure that even then there would be enough time to bring it back to the committee, have another vote, find consensus and submit, but there's a possibility for that. So there's kind of a narrow window of time for action. If you aren't satisfied with the plan, just going down the alternative path I've described and that ecology describes. So it's really, this is a process point, and any response that the board and again, the tribe would want to provide to BIAW. There was not a conversation or an opportunity for conversation with BIAW before they entered their no vote during the voting on April 20th or 21st. I can't remember which date, but we didn't have a time to talk with them. So it kind of was an 11th hour development.
Jennifer, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me step back a little bit in terms of the process. The path forward that the Board of County Commissioners worked out with the Squaxin tribe, that language was presented to the full committee, not just ecology, right?
Correct. It was taken to the full committee.
And so then there was no signal to Caitlin or others that the BIAW had concerns with that language until the vote came up. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe there was, Caitlin, you can remind me about this, but I believe BIAW left a couple messages with Squaxin and with Kate, indicating that they wanted to discuss the language. But then upon calling back and reaching back, there was sort of radio silence. So I think they had made a policy decision at that point and decided to bring it forward at the final vote instead of trying to discuss it ahead of time.
Got it. Okay, so in terms of process, the county commissioners, we and the Squaxin Island tribe found a path forward, presented that, full transparency, opportunity for discussion not had, vote made. That's where we are.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. Commissioner Mejia, questions?
So my first instinct, I guess, is like, let's just go forward, I guess, if it seems like it wouldn't be able to make its rounds again, can you break the deadlines down for me, Jennifer? Like, when would it actually, if you can give me dates instead of just that way I can have a better picture in my head.
So Kate can help me out with this, but June 30th is the final date of action ecology has under the law to approve these plans. And so it's really in ecology's hands in terms of deciding how much time they need or would need if we were to try to do a last minute change, a reconvening of the committee, a revote and a submittal, and then giving them enough time to go through their review process. So I don't have interim dates for that. I do know that ecology has expressed that June 30th is the time they have, and they are well into reviewing and their approval process for the plans that they do have on their desk. Kate, is there any more you can add to that?
No, unfortunately, it is very vague language. They did provide that they thought that the date that we had decided on for the vote was going to provide them with enough time, and that they're concerned any less time that they have to review it. So that is really the only date that we've been provided.
And Kate, I think you guys said it, but just to clarify, the date of the vote was April 20th, right?
Yes.
So has the tribe received the letter from BIAW, and are they planning to issue a response? Do you happen to know that?
The letter was provided to the entire planning unit, and I don't know if they are planning on discussing it with them. At the vote, it was pretty tense, and I think members of the tribe were fairly upset with the decision. So I haven't been able to speak to them about what they were intending to do next.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
Yes, sir. What are other jurisdictions doing on this time frame around the state? I mean, what's pending? We must not be the only one that's come up against a lone no vote, for an example. So what are they doing, and are they extending it because of COVID, or are they just marching ahead with rulemaking or whatever their plans are?
My understanding
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My understanding from ecology is that for the other watershed planning units that failed to reach consensus, and remind me, Kate, it was 7
And 8.
and 8, and also 14.
So far, there are quite a few that have not voted yet.
So we still don't know the full picture, but for those that have not reached consensus, I think their planning unit processes are considered done, and those plans will go to the alternate process that ecology spells out in the handout that you have in your packet.
I mean, to me, it doesn't look like the law has any leeway. And so it just goes to that date. We don't have a consensus, and what happens, happens. And at some point, it'll be figured out in court if there's a big enough dispute, I suppose.
Right, and the next process that ecology engages in with surfboard review and then rulemaking, we'll have opportunities for input from, again, the county and all the folks who were involved in the planning unit to provide that input directly to ecology to come up with rules that will work for the watershed, hopefully, and for all parties.
Okay, I see you, Ramiro, but I just wanted to ask a couple myself, and I'll get to you. If, in theory, let's say there were no timelines involved, and we had more time to work this out, is it the situation that if we responded to BIAW and said, you know, you make a compelling argument, you're right, let's take it out, then Squaxin Island Tribe could potentially not approve the plan. So it's kind of, it's not necessarily possible to achieve consensus given where we are today. Is that fair?
The Squaxin Island Tribe did make that statement at the vote, that if it was removed, they would vote no. But unfortunately, the other thing to consider is that they also voted no on the Kennedy-Goldsboro plan, and that doesn't include rulemaking, and they didn't include a letter on why they decided to vote no on that. So
The building industry is voting no on 14?
yes.
Okay, well, we got to get there then. But one more question on this. So, Jennifer, you said something about the draft would go to ecology and they would work on it or whatever, but we don't really have an approved draft. So, I mean, I'm questioning that. To what extent would ecology make use of the work done by our watershed group versus just writing their own plan from scratch? Because you could imagine, I mean, in this case, there's only one disputed provision, but you could imagine where there was no agreement on anything and there wasn't anything to work from. We have almost a draft plan, but I'm just wondering how ecology treats that since it really didn't have the approval of the group.
Yeah, I don't know, Kate. I just know what I've heard from ecology is that they take the, whatever draft was landed on and the recommendations for and against, and they move forward with that in some manner. And that's the sort of full scope of what I understand. I don't know, Kate, if you have more perspective on
Sure.
that.
The way that the process has worked so far is that there have been multiple drafts. It goes out to review, people voice their concerns, we discuss it, and then we move on and make additional changes as another draft. And prior to this vote, we did have a lot of those discussions and we went through a lot of those drafts. So I do believe that they will be taking the final draft that we had landed on prior to not having an agreement. So the way that it would work next is that ecology would look at that draft and make whatever changes they want first before sending it over to the Salmon Recovery Funding Board. And then that board makes a technical review and they provide a recommendation to ecology, where ecology then has the decision to make whatever changes they see fit.
Okay, so they'll make good use of the work that was done, probably, as long as they feel like it's on point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about 14 then, because I didn't see that coming.
I don't think any of us saw that coming, as I understand it. But again, we have a very small portion of the Kennedy-Goldsboro watershed in Thurston County. Largely, it's in Mason County. And I do believe there were some discussions among the two tribes and Mason County that could not get resolved in that process. There were also no votes from Department of Fish and Wildlife, which was a bit of a surprise. Because those were founded on some critique they had of methodology used to calculate the water offsets. Those are the same methodologies we've used in all the other plans that they have voted yes on. So that's a bit of a mystery, but that was the basis of their concern. And then I believe BIAW also voted no to the WRIA 14 plan, if that's right, Kate. And I didn't see a letter from them explaining that one, so I am unsure of the reasoning there.
Right, and it was specifically requested in the Deschutes vote. Members wanted to know, because it was so close to a decision. For the WRIA 14, it was disbanded fairly quickly because it sounds like the opposing viewpoints were very strong and very deeply rooted. And I wasn't a part of those conversations.
Opposing viewpoints between who?
Between WDFW, the building industry, and the tribes. And Mason County did not elaborate. So I don't know specifically if that was fully what the decision was on the Skokomish and the Squaxin tribes part to vote no. But discussing it with them, they had voiced that they were feeling comfortable enough knowing that there was an MOU with Mason County to conduct water planning. And I think that just didn't work out to be enough with the rulemaking discussions they were having with them, the same way that they were having them with us.
But the building industry, who wrote a very long letter, none of which applies to 14, gave
Right.
no indication of why they voted no on 14.
Correct.
Okay. Questions from the other commissioners on that piece of it, WRIA 14 plan?
Yeah, I was not expecting that one. I thought that one was a shoo-in, but shows how much I know. I don't have any really specific questions. Thank you.
Okay. Ramiro, sorry, you had your hand up.
No, I think you asked the question that I wanted to ask in terms of what would be the process at this point for the college to take the draft plan and go through the approval process, and that has always been the risk when we embark on this on these WRIA plans, that if we don't reach a consensus, then the college will take over because the deadlines are in the statute. And there is really no flexibility, and they are under the gun to get those plans approved. And as you may recall, each of the different WRIAs, they have different deadlines. And you know, and that was that was put in the statute, so it is difficult. They also feel under the gun, and one of the risks that we highlighted at the beginning of this process, here we are. You know, we didn't reach a consensus. And now the college is going to go through the ORA approval process. Hopefully, through their process, they honor at least the majority of their feedback of the members of the different planning groups they have already put into this plan, the draft plan. So that, I guess that's the hope that we have. They will honor most of the work the majority of the group has already put on those plans. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And I think the mystery is a little, at the beginning, we had no idea when ecology hadn't approved any plan. It was like the first groups were like, well, if we don't come to consensus, we don't know what we're going to get. But now that ecology has approved a few plans, we kind of have a sense of what they find acceptable and maybe the risk level. Of course, every watershed's different and has its own considerations, but it's a little bit less scary, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, knowing kind of what they see as a plan that makes sense. And as Jennifer said, if they've approved that, if there's objected to methodologies that have been approved in other plans, and I don't see why ecology would take issue with that. And so it may be that the plan ends up looking almost exactly like what the group hammered out.
Right.
Because it's, from ecology's perspective, appropriate. We'll just have to see. It'll be interesting. So anything else for us to decide or do? Thanks for this update. Very interesting.
It's just, yeah, an update, really is very little the county can do at this point. It's really, is the college is going to be taking the next steps.
I think this is just a precursor, if you will, to future litigation. That's where it's going eventually.
It could be. It could be.
And I don't think there's anything we can do one way or the other on this at this point in time, except wait, I guess, because it says consensus, says all, so it's pretty simple. It's going to end up in court. I could see this coming for the last few years. Eventually, that's where it's going to go on property rights issues, so it'll be interesting.
We'll continue, CPED staff will continue to stay engaged and watch the process through ecology rulemaking and look for the opportunities for the county to weigh in with when there's public comment and other opportunities like that. We'll keep you posted throughout.
Yeah, that would be great. If you can let me know when is appropriate to update the commissioners, that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Josh had his hand up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to express appreciation to the board. I mean, this is a complicated topic, and thank you for kind of letting us step through each one of these different watersheds. And also wanted to express appreciation to Kate and Jennifer for being at this table and putting in a really good faith effort to try and come to consensus. So it's hard work, it's complicated, but thank you for all of us following along on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, in Caitlin knows, but then Chehalis, it landed on an agreement, but it was with a letter from Quinault tribe saying, basically, we don't agree, but we're not going to stand in the way. Like, we had levels of consensus, and they sort of picked the lowest level that got us across the line. So, I mean, these are difficult, and it's a lot of it's just, how strong a position are the different groups going to take on the particular issues, the block consensus versus letting the plan move forward. So, okay, thank you, guys. The board is back in session at 11 for budget amendment.
Thank you.
We're adjourned now.
Thank you.